The third season begins in the mind of Hyun-soo. His emotions waver as he feels responsible for Yi-kyeong's death. His monstrous form takes control and terrorizes Eun-yoo. However, for some reason he cannot attack her, as if he recognizes the woman he loves. Eun-yoo takes the opportunity to strike Hyun-soo until he faints, allowing the real him to return. Meanwhile, in the lab, Sang-wook reveals his true identity to Dr. Lim. Sang-won, a friend of Dr. Lim and the first study subject, as well as Yi-kyeong's husband and Si-yoon's father. He explains his survival due to his ability to possess other bodies, and introduces his three subordinates, monsters with special abilities. Elsewhere, Young-hoo is a prisoner of Sang-won. With his hands tied and his subordinates being devoured, he attacks the monsters to try to save them, but is still too injured to fight. Recovered, Hyun-soo prepares to enter a hole to rescue Yi-kyeong, who is still alive in her monstrous form. Eun-yoo tries to stop him, but he asks her to trust that he will bring her back. Upon reaching the bottom, Hyun-soo embraces Yi-kyeong's nearly fully transformed body and enters her mind, where he sees her walking towards Si-yoon's voice. In the lab, Sang-won and his subordinates demand that Dr. Lim show them the way to the stadium, where they want to find Si-yoon, who is also on her way. At the stadium, Chief Ji plans to sacrifice Ye-sol, who fortunately discovers her intentions and attacks first. Eun-yoo waited for Hyun-soo when Cha-young and Hani appeared to take her to a safe place. Suddenly, a monster interested in Hyun-soo appears. Eun-yoo and Cha-young decide to descend into the hole to distract it, while Hyun-soo continues trying to save Yi-kyeong. Cha-young, to keep Eun-yoo out of danger, ties her to the rope for Hani to pull her up. With the girl safe, Cha-young faced the monster alone while calling for Hyun-soo, who was still inside Yi-kyeong's mind. He manages to bring her back and eliminate the monster attacking Cha-young. Outside the hole, Hyun-soo manages to return Yi-kyeong to her human form, revealing her highly sought-after special ability. In the morning, Yi-kyeong woke up confused to find she was human again. After, Eun-yoo explained what had happened. Grateful to Hyun-soo, Yi-kyeong asked to be taken to him, but Eun-yoo said it was impossible, as he was sleeping, and his monster wings seemed to protect him from anyone approaching. Meanwhile, Hani and Cha-young visited Ho-sung, who had fainted after being drugged by Hani. Convinced that the monsters were dangerous creatures that should be eliminated, he asked Hani if she would continue with him or join others. She stated that his belief about the monsters was wrong after seeing Hyun-soo transform Yi-kyeong back into a human. However, her words did not reach Ho-sung, who remained steadfast in his conviction. After seeing Hyun-soo sleeping, Yi-kyeong decided to go to the stadium to prevent Si-yoon from converting all the survivors into monsters. Meanwhile, Sang-won was also on his way to the stadium, telling Dr. Lim that his hunch was correct because his daughter, Si-yoon, had arrived at the stadium. The survivors at the stadium faced problems after discovering that Chief Ji had hidden the monsters. Unnoticed by Tak, Si-yoon entered and mingled with the survivors, but fortunately, had not yet acted because she found Young-soo, one of the Green Home survivors. Shortly after, Sang-won and his subordinates arrived at the stadium, and Tak ordered the troops to prepare to fight. However, Sang-won managed to paralyze everyone, leaving Tak with no choice but to fulfill his wish to gather all the children in the stadium. Si-yoon, realizing the invaders' bad intentions, became worried, but Young-soo reassured her. In the lab, Young-hoo managed to defeat the horde of monsters. However, the reason he was still alive despite his severe injury was the sacrifice of his subordinates. Determined to get revenge, he decided to return to the stadium. Meanwhile, Hani tried to convince Ho-sang to join her group, but he seemed to be infected by the plague. Hani, who considered him a father, ran to where Hyun-soo was sleeping, but Eun-yoo stopped her, warning her of the danger. Hani returned to Ho-sang, followed by Cha-young. Losing his consciousness, Ho-sang asked her to kill him as she had promised, but she did not have the courage. Ho-sang then decided to sacrifice himself by crashing his car and causing an explosion that attracted the surrounding monsters. Eun-yoo, feeling that only Hyun-soo could save them, tried to wake him up. He woke up shortly after, but his blue eyes indicated that it was not Hyun-soo but his monstrous form. In an instant, he attacked the monsters but also tried to attack Cha-young. Fortunately, Eun-yoo managed to inject a sedative to stop him. In the lab, Young-hoo was about to leave when he saw someone on the verge of death and decided to take them with him. At the stadium, Dr. Lim was approached by Yi-kyeong, who tried to kill him. However, Dr. Lim revealed that her husband, Sang-wook, was still alive and possessed another body. Initially, she didn't believe him. But when Dr. Lim warned her to hide, it was because Sang-wook was approaching. She heard her husband say that his goal was to find Si-yoon, as he considered their daughter's body the perfect vessel for him. It didn't take long for him to find her. Meanwhile, when Yong-hoo stopped to refuel the car, the person with him fled to the stadium. It was revealed to be Eun-hyuk, leader of Green Home and Eun-yoo's brother. When the soldier tried to discover Eun-hyuk's purpose, he chose death and became enveloped in a giant cocoon. Surprisingly, the arriving monsters seemed to bow to protect the cocoon. The next morning, Eun-yoo pondered whether to take Hyun-soo in his current state, fearing that upon waking, his monstrous form would take control and complicate things. Chae-young suggested leaving without Hyun-soo, but she believed that without him, everything would be more difficult. As they discussed, Hyun-soo awoke in his monstrous form. However, instead of fearing him, Eun-yoo approached, realizing that he could not harm her and that his monstrous form obeyed her commands. After finding Si-yoon, Sang-wook acted like a father, taking her for a walk and speaking paternalistically. At the stadium, Tak argued with his subordinates about finding the secret passage that only Chief Ji knew to save the survivors. Ye-seol arrived with a map of the stadium, given by Chief Ji herself, who decided to sacrifice herself for the monster she had hidden, which turned out to be her own son. Back with Eun-yoo's group, as they rested briefly, the three were surprised by the change in Hyun-soo's appearance. Shortly after, Eun-yoo saw that Hani was having a seizure and tried to find a cure, but then she saw Sang-wook with Si-yoon. He asked his daughter to show her special ability. As if under his influence, she awakened a giant sleeping monster and gathered the nearby monsters. Hyun-soo, who was following Eun-yoo, sensed the danger and went to her aid, defeating the monster that Si-yoon had awakened. Unexpectedly, one of Sang-wook's subordinates, Jae-jin, who also had a special ability, appeared and was excited to face Hyun-soo, believing he could defeat him. However, Hyun-soo didn't even try and had already torn off his opponent's hand, stating that they were very different, as he was not an experimental creature like Jae-jin and the others. Panicked, Jae-jin tried a surprise attack, but Hyun-soo read his intentions and defeated him easily. After the walk with Si-yoon, Sang-wook returned to the stadium. When Si-yoon was alone, Yi-kyeong appeared and hugged her tightly. Si-yoon, feeling guilty for having turned her into a monster, didn't understand the hug. Yi-kyeong said she wanted to apologize for the past treatment, for never considering her a human being, and asked Si-yoon for another chance to be her mother. Si-yoon, still in doubt, asked for time to think. To save one of his subordinates from being executed for violating the rules established by Sang-wook, Tak was forced to reveal that he was infected with the plague and that his time was limited. After this, he sought out Dr. Lim to ask about his plans to transform him into a monster with special abilities. Dr. Lim, obsessed, told him to do something to start the process. Yong-hoo, upon waking up, was surprised to see that the large cocoon was shrinking and that Eun-hyuk, who was covered in wounds the night before, seemed to be fine, as if he had been reborn. Moreover, the monster that was there left immediately after Eun-hyuk spoke to it. It was revealed that the final stage of the infection was to become a neo-human, a new type of human with superior abilities, such as intelligence, speed, and immortality. However, to reach this stage, infected humans needed to suppress their excessive desires, or they would become common monsters. Eun-hyuk also explained that neo-humans were perfect humans, but without feelings, as if their hearts were dead. He also said that Sang-wook hated the neo-humans because they surpassed him. Back with Eun-yoo's group, they were worried as they had lost track of Hyun-soo. After talking to Yong-soo, who encouraged her to return to her mother, Si-yoon decided to accept Yi-kyeong's invitation to escape together. However, Sang-wook intercepted them. Yi-kyeong, knowing his plan, tried to protect Si-yoon, but Sang-wook easily paralyzed her. When he was about to take Si-yoon, Yi-kyeong struggled to confront him again, but was unable to defeat the monster and ended up dying, leaving Si-yoon devastated by losing her mother before her eyes. Meanwhile, Hyun-soo treated Jae-jin as if he were a toy. On the other hand, Eun-yoo, who was trying to reach him, was surprised to see her brother inside the car driven by Yong-hoo. She was completely shocked to see her brother, whom she believed to be dead, appear before her. Seeing Hyun-soo carrying Jae-jin, Young-hoo used his car to attack them, seeking revenge against Jae-jin for what he had done in the lab. However, his actions did not affect Jae-jin much, as he had rapid regeneration. Hyun-soo, trapped in a bus, remembered that Eun-hyuk had once been his leader at Greenhome. The two engaged in a fierce fight on the bus, but Hyun-soo's monster abilities were not enough to defeat Eun-hyuk, who easily dodged all attacks directed at him. Soon after, Eun-yoo arrived with a look of surprise, calling out to him, but Eun-hyuk ignored her as if he didn't care. Feeling challenged, Jae-jin used his ability to emit hot lead and trapped Hyun-soo and Eun-hyuk inside the bus, quickly fleeing the scene. Hyun-soo used his monster wings to create an opening and took advantage of a small space to allow Eun-hyuk to get out first. When Eun-hyuk exited, he looked coldly at Eun-yoo, who was worried about him, while the other three pursued Jae-jin to the stadium. As Eun-hyuk waited for Hyun-soo to come out, Eun-yoo, still in disbelief that her brother could have survived, continued trying to approach him. He, as if he didn't care about his sister, said that his goal was never to find her, but to end the chaos caused by Sang-won. The situation at the stadium was chaotic with the arrival of the injured Jae-jin. Additionally, everyone was receiving orders from Sang-won to collect firewood. Dr. Lim took the opportunity to order Tak to inject a sedative into one of Sang-won's subordinates. Dr. Lim had stored the last serum that could turn Tak into a special monster inside her body. Tak found her, and with some tricks, managed to paralyze her. Sang-won approached Si-yoon, who was unprotected, and with a desire for revenge, grabbed Young-soo's hand, instantly turning him into a monster. Jae-jin, realizing that Si-yoon had escaped, informed Sang-won, who became furious and ordered her to be found immediately, as the body transfer ritual was to take place that same night. While he was desperately searching for Si-yoon, Dr. Lim managed to extract the serum from the woman's body. When Eun-hyuk was losing faith that Hyun-soo would be able to escape, suddenly Hyun-soo, with his monster wings combined with burning flames, managed to get out of the trap. Eun-yoo noticed that Hyun-soo's eyes were black, indicating that he was the real one. It was revealed that when the monstrous consciousness couldn't escape the trap, it asked Hyun-soo why he always managed to recover at critical moments, especially when it came to Eun-yoo. It then decided to combine its personality with the original Hyun-soo, believing that together they would have complete monstrous abilities. Hyun-soo gave Eun-hyuk a piece of his wings to use in the fight against Sang-won. Eun-yoo felt happy because the two people she loved had returned, even though her brother continued to ignore her. Back at the stadium, Tak, feeling that the situation was becoming more dangerous, ordered his troops to warn all the survivors to gather at night and leave the stadium through a secret passage. Then, he went to see Dr. Lim to become a special monster and defeat Sang-won. However, when Dr. Lim was about to inject the serum, he discovered that Si-yoon could turn people into monsters and canceled his plan, as his initial intention was to become a special monster. But that could never be realized because he was not infected with the plague. Upon discovering that the girl could turn people into monsters, his hope was renewed. Meanwhile, Si-yoon had turned some of the stadium survivors into monsters she could control to attack Sang-won. Tak, having lost his plan to become a special monster, lost hope of saving the survivors until Young-hoo, whom he believed was dead, appeared before him. His spirit returned, and the two planned to save as many survivors as possible at all costs. But before that, Tak revealed that he had been infected with the plague, and that soon his consciousness would disappear. While heading to the stadium, Eun-yoo heard someone's voice calling her and realized it was a hallucination, indicating that she had been infected and would soon turn into a monster. Not wanting to be a burden, she asked Hyun-soo to leave with Eun-hyuk. Although it was difficult for Hyun-soo, seeing her determination, he left her. The woman who took care of Young-soo was looking for him when she bumped into Si-yoon, who had turned some of the survivors into her monster army. The girl tried to turn her into a monster, but a slime-like monster appeared, revealing itself to be Young-soo. Si-yoon was surprised when the woman did not hesitate to hug the boy, despite him having turned into a monster. Shortly after, Sang-won appeared and killed Si-yoon's protectors, which triggered her anger, causing her to order her monster army to attack him. However, Sang-won easily defeated the entire army and took Si-yoon to seize her body. Outside, Dr. Lim, who had been waiting for Si-yoon, asked to be transformed into a monster. But Sang-won, already aware of his intentions, stabbed him and took the serum. Dr. Lim, who was just an ordinary human, begged Si-yoon to transform him into a monster, but she refused, and Dr. Lim succumbed to his injury. All the sacrifice of innocent lives was in vain, as he remained a mere human until the end of his life. At the stadium, Cha-young, while on duty to lead the remaining survivors to a safe place, accidentally found Ye-seol, who was about to commit suicide after witnessing all the killings by Sang-won. However, upon seeing him in front of her, she decided to continue living. Sang-won, after feeling that all the preparations were ready and considering all his subordinates useless, cruelly killed his most loyal subordinate. After that, he entered the flames to leave his current body and take control of Si-yoon's body. After doing so, he obtained a new vessel, Si-yoon's body, which had the special ability to transform humans into monsters, as well as to summon or awaken nearby monsters. That night, Hyun-soo and Eun-hyuk arrived at the stadium and, without any fear, searched for Sang-won in every room they passed. Meanwhile, Cha-young, who was with Ye-seol looking for the secret passage using the map she had received from Chief Ji, accidentally encountered Sang-won's subordinate, who had been abducted by Tak. When Hyun-soo separated from Eun-hyuk, he finally found Si-yoon, not knowing that her body was controlled by Sang-won. Meanwhile, Tak, who was with Young-hoo and the other survivors, was crossing the secret passage. Suddenly, he started showing symptoms of the final stages of the infection, which scared everyone and caused chaos. Using what was left of his consciousness, Tak took the explosives he was carrying to commit suicide, but Young-hoo stopped him, as if they exploded. Everyone would die. However, Tak, who had lost consciousness, activated the explosive he was carrying, but strangely, nothing happened, as he transformed into a monster resembling an ice skate that protected everyone. Hyun-soo was with the false Si-yoon. When she called him by his name, Hyun-soo finally realized that Sang-won had taken over Si-yoon's body. He felt he could bring her back, as he did with Yi-kyeong, and immediately tried to enter her subconscious. When Hyun-soo tried to wake her up, Sang-won appeared to thwart his plan. But something happened. It turned out that Eun-hyuk had arrived and attacked Si-yoon. Hyun-soo, seeing his actions, asked for time, as he felt he could recover Si-yoon without hurting her. But Sang-won used Si-yoon's ability to summon nearby monsters and attack the two of them. The final battle was inevitable. Hyun-soo and Eun-hyuk had to fight against the hordes of monsters summoned by the villain. Hyun-soo, thinking the monsters were harmless, tried to paralyze them, unlike Eun-hyuk, who mercilessly killed anyone who tried to attack him. Hyun-soo did everything he could to hold Si-yoon and enter her subconscious again, but the monsters prevented him. Eun-hyuk, knowing that all the hordes of monsters were summoned by Si-yoon's power, ignored his battle companion's previous requests not to attack the girl's body, and launched the fragment of the monster wing given by Hyun-soo against her. Initially, Sang-won tried to block the attack with his monster tentacles, but Si-yoon's body seemed to struggle, preventing him from doing anything. The fragment finally pierced the girl's body, forcing the villain to abandon it and seek another body. Eun-hyuk immediately pursued him while Hyun-soo rushed to take the dying Si-yoon to a safe place. Si-yoon, gravely injured, apologized to him for causing a disaster by turning innocent humans into monsters. Hyun-soo said he would fix everything by returning everyone to their human form. Si-yoon, near death, asked him to end everything, especially by killing Sang-won. Initially, Hyun-soo refused because he didn't want to leave her, but then Young-soo, in his monstrous form, appeared to accompany her. Meanwhile, at the stadium, after Tak transformed into an ice door, everyone was very scared, but Hani, without fear, entered the ice door, which was actually not dangerous. Everyone entered until only one person was left. When that person tried to enter through the ice door, they were not allowed. It turned out to be Jae-jin, who, frustrated at not being able to cross, tried to attack Young-hoo, but Cha-young and the girls came to his rescue. The girl, now a special monster, easily overpowered Jae-jin, but he used his ability in an attempt to kill everyone. Young-hoo, anticipating the attack, quickly climbed while the girl used her ability to create a bridge and save Cha-young and Ye-seol, sacrificing herself in the process. After ensuring the two were safe, Young-hoo placed the explosive he carried in Jae-jin's mouth and jumped to the ice door before it exploded. Meanwhile, after leaving Si-yoon's body, Sang-won took over the body of his dead subordinate. But this was not a problem for Hyun-soo, who with his fireproof monster wing managed to defeat the villain's new form. However, this was not enough to end him, as he abandoned that body to seek another vessel. Seeing this, Eun-hyuk approached Hyun-soo and suggested a plan to kill Sang-won, lure him into his own body, and then have Hyun-soo burn him until he disappeared. Hyun-soo opposed this, as even though Eun-hyuk could regenerate, there was no guarantee he would survive, which would leave Eun-yoo saddened. While they were discussing the best way to defeat the villain, he suddenly appeared in Sang-wook's body, the person who had fought alongside Hyun-soo and Eun-hyuk at Greenhome. Eun-hyuk, believing that Hyun-soo wouldn't have the courage to attack a friend's body, tried to act, but Hyun-soo said he would handle everything. Surprisingly, Sang-wook's body reacted against Sang-won. Seeing this, Hyun-soo realized that his friend was still fighting for them, as he had once promised Yuri that he would live without hurting others. Sang-won, unable to control the body, seemed overwhelmed. Sang-wook appeared to be holding him in the flames, and in the end, he sacrificed himself to defeat Sang-won. Meanwhile, Eun-yoo visited her home, and the infection finally reached its final stage. Almost losing consciousness, she remembered her moments with her older brother, Eun-hyuk, who told her that everything would be all right. Hyun-soo returned to the place where he had separated from her but couldn't find her. He also got separated from Eun-hyuk. A few days later, the rescued survivors were living in an empty building. Soon after, Cha-young and Hyun-soo arrived with more survivors they had managed to save. Hyun-soo saw that his efforts to help people brought happiness. Then, he said there was a safe place nearby for the survivors, but it was probably already inhabited by another species. Young-hoo, trusting Hyun-soo, decided to let him take them to that place. Upon arriving at the mentioned location, it was discovered that it was the colony of the neo-humans, and for the first time, humans and neo-humans could meet in person. Months passed, and everyone was living well and in harmony. At the end of the series, Eun-hyuk showed Hyun-soo that there was a new neo-human, who was none other than Eun-yoo. Seeing her, Hyun-soo smiled, remembering when he first saw her at Greenhome. This ends the third and final season of Sweet Home, a Korean drama, action, and science fiction on Netflix.